This story is quite breathtaking. This is Woking Council that is now in 1.2 billion pounds worth of debt. They have a fewer than 100,000 residents. The amount of debt is £47,000 per household. The Borough Council is undergoing an asset disposal strategy, and as part of its recovery plan after issuing a Section 114 notice, is declaring itself bankrupt, playing with somebody else's money, yours. Joining me now is Joe Ventry, who's a digital campaign manager at the TaxPayers Alliance. Joe, good evening to you. Thank you for joining me.
Good evening, Petri. Thank you for having me on.
Listen, this story is becoming all too often repeated, where councils are playing roulette. They know nothing about building huge things, and yet somehow they plough billions of pounds, millions of pounds, hundreds of millions of pounds into projects that they have no idea what they're doing, and often they lose money because of it. How is this allowed to go on?
Well, absolutely, Petri. And, I think a couple of years ago, the chief executive of the council said that he wanted Woking to be the Singapore of Surrey. And I think, frankly, it's turned out more like the Silicon Valley Bank of Surrey. I mean, racking up £1.2 billion of debt, it's an obscene amount of money. I mean, we look at wasting councils all the time. We see councils like, Thurrock, councils like Croydon going bust, declaring bankruptcy. But 1.2 billion is a staggering number. And I just think it speaks to the scale and the appalling nature of the way that they've been able to rack up this horrific deficit. And of course, it's regular hardworking taxpayers in Woking now. They're going to have to pick up the tab for this.
And also lose services because of it, right? Because they're going to have to face cuts. The two men responsible for this have retired, right? I'd love to know what their retirement package looks like. But nobody is ever held responsible for this. And this is what drives me absolutely nuts. We pay councils. They work for us, right? Although you'd think we work for them. We pay them to clean the streets, take the rubbish, provide social care, maintain roads, and other jobs. We don't give them our money so they can go to Las Vegas and stick it on red number 2.
Well, this is it. And of course, there have been concerns raised by the auditors that the chief executive in question was, allowed to spend, I think it was £3 million every year without any oversight from the council whatsoever. And of course, we've seen now how that's played out. And if you just look over the tenure of the outgoing chief executive, the average council tax bill in Woking during that time went up 71% over around a 15-year period. So, this is all off the back of regular hardworking taxpayers who, like you say, want to see their bins collected, they want to see the potholes filled. And of course, this council has gone on this enormous spending spree, investing in energy companies in Milton Keynes, trying to play property speculation with skyscrapers that have then gone on to quadruple in cost. And it's just ended up with this enormous mess. And I think this is a real warning sign to councils that are just speculatively placing all these money in these high-risk investments and, treating it like the Monopoly board.
But there's this property speculation. There are specialists in this, right? And who I'm just so confused. I'm so confused why they don't ask experts about this, and they just go about saying, "Yeah, it's a really good idea. Let's build all these high rises, these office blocks, at a time when people are working from home more and more. HSBC Tower is about to divest itself of all humans, right? That's going to be empty. These properties are losers. Anybody can see that. We all know that. But why didn't they know that?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, actual property investors get these things wrong all the time. And, it's one thing when you're playing with your own money, when you're putting your own money at risk. But of course, these council management teams are putting taxpayers' money at risk. And you almost think, is there a sort of feeling of negligence there where, oh, well, it's not our money, it's local government money, so we can do with it as we like. It's an appalling attitude. And it's an appalling way to treat local people who are seeing those council tax bills go up year on year. And of course, I think now that sadly the chickens are coming home to roost in the inflationary environment we're seeing. Those debts are spiraling. Those costs are piling up after years and years of bad investments. And, as I say, it's local taxpayers that are going to be picking up that bill. We've seen already in councils like Croydon where they've gone bust. residents are facing a 15% council tax rise this year, and you can almost certainly bet the Woking residents are facing a similar conundrum. It's completely unfair.
Yeah, the borough has to find £62 million a year simply to pay back the borrowing, and I don't think a penny has actually been paid back, so that'll probably be on interest. £47,000 worth of debt for each of Woking's 43,000 households. I mean, the numbers are eye-watering, but it is not just Woking who lent money to the Central Milton, or gave money to Central Milton Keynes. They've not got none of this makes any sense. But why is it allowed to happen, and why is it nobody seems to be being held responsible for taking this money and being reckless with it?
Well, this is the thing. I think there is a real accountability problem with councils. One of the things that we do at the Taxpayers Alliance every year is we produce a piece of research called the Town Hall Rich List, which allows council taxpayers to log on and to look at their local councils and to see what the local chief executive, the local director of health, to see what they earn, to see what they get in their remuneration packages. And what we found actually this year is that more than ever, more and more councils are failing to file their accounts on time. And of course, Woking was one of them. So we're left in this darkness now where, councils which are failing, councils which are, splashing people's money up the wall on these sorts of things, aren't even managing to get their accounts in on time to give local taxpayers that basic level of accountability. And it's just completely unfair. And the situation seems to be spiraling out of control. But I do think a more cautious approach to this sort of property investment from local councils is going to have to be taken from now on. I think this has set the bar so low.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, this has been going on for years, though. I've known of other councils, London councils, who've invested literally not knowing anything about owning a property portfolio in sites that have never even been built on. Right, so they've spent all this money to have something developed. It's never been developed, or it's never happened. They've never seen that money again. They've some councils investing in shopping centres in foreign lands, in foreign countries, that they never see a return on their investment. This is just a shocking abuse of, as you say, of taxpayers' money. That is not what we pay our council tax for. Why are they failing? We've got about 4 big boroughs at the moment, not including Woking, which is quite a small one, about to go bust. Why?
Well, exactly. And, it's a real interesting phenomenon, actually. As you sort of mentioned in the prelude, this was something that central government introduced a number of years ago. Basically, you had councils complaining that they weren't getting enough revenue. And so central government sort of eased up the ways for local governments to invest in local areas and to sort of obtain cheap credit from the Treasury to do so. So there has been incentives from central government to go down this path. And, we sort of initially at the Taxpayers Alliance, we sort of took a fairly balanced view at it. We had a lot of council leaders saying that, well, sensible investments here and there allow us to keep council tax bills low on people. It was a way of generating revenue without putting on the back of local taxpayers. But I think this example that we've seen from Woking is just the worst of the worst. It shows you absolutely how this situation can end up if you end up in a spiral. And it's something we've been warning about for years and years, where you've had these councils betting everything on these investments at a very high risk, no risk assessments performed. And now you get a bad economic environment like we're in, and it just all comes plummeting down.
Which proves that it was only just being propped up by a matchstick and feathers in the first place. The thing is, look, a lot of people look at their council and they think they've become very flabby. Their pension pot is too big. Their wages are too high, and we don't get the services that we deserve. Is that why they're going broke? Because they overextend themselves? I mean, they must overextend themselves.
They do, and you see this for all different reasons. If you look at Slough Council, which went bust, I think maybe 2 years ago now, or certainly at least a year ago. I believe they spent somewhere in the region of £50 million refurbishing their offices just before they went bankrupt. It was like a Silicon Valley sort of setup in there, with hammocks and these green spaces. And then, of course, the council goes immediately bust afterwards. And you look at Croydon, where they gave a multi-100,000 pound exit payment to one of the outgoing chief executives before going bankrupt. And you just think, do these councils have the right priorities in mind? Are they there
No.
to serve the local taxpayers as they should be? And you just think someone needs to click the reset button on these priorities.
I mean, I know the same is going on in Hammersmith and Fulham, which is my borough at the moment. There's some extensive building works going on there. I hope they'll be very comfortable. Meanwhile, potholes. Meanwhile, rubbish. I think all of us are incredibly frustrated by these local councils just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we're funding these vanity projects. I mean, you see councils, painting different zebra crossings, which are actually really bad for people who've got bad eyesight, right? But no, they want to do that because they want to appear woke, and they'll spend 50 grand on a zebra crossing. And we're all going, well, that's okay if you've got butter, if you've got butter and cream on the side, but if you haven't, don't do that. Why do they do that?
Well, this is the thing. You've got these sprawling bureaucracies in councils now with, widening HR departments. And as usual, when you've got a widening bureaucracy, whether it's in central government, devolved government, local government, it just sort of keeps expanding. It keeps sort of moving beyond its remit and moving further and further away from its goals, which of course is to serve the needs of local taxpayers. They want to see, again, there's potholes filled. They want to see the bins collected. Those really basic things that we ask from councils at a bare minimum. And of course, they get distracted on these pet projects. They spend millions upon millions of our pounds on these things, and then suddenly find ourselves, in this sort of crisis. And, in a lot of cases, the councils will say, oh, well, look, we're facing these huge inflationary pressures. We're facing a pandemic, which tightened everyone's pockets. Well, the answer to that, of course, is, well, during the good times, you should have been shoring up the ship for,
Exactly.
stormy weathers. And it seems like a lot of these councils now have been caught short. And frankly, it reveals the sort of incompetence that was going on in the good years.
But I mean, also, Joe, I seem to have a memory of was it banks in Iceland that many of our councils had invested in a huge pots of money in, and it was there, and yet those councils were putting up prices for people, and they had these buffer amounts of money which they lost in the crash. And everybody in those councils was saying, well, hang on a minute, you've just put my council tax up. Why are you keeping this safety net of money? What for? And a lot of councils do that too.
No, you're absolutely right. It's a really strange phenomenon. So predominantly the councils that invest in these sort of commercial property investments, they exist in the southeast of England. The vast bulk of them do. And a lot of them, I think about half of their investments tend to be outside of the areas.
Yeah.
So they become these really speculative, disconnected investments. You just wonder where on earth that money's going and how it's serving local taxpayers. And then, of course, as you say, if those benefits aren't reaped by local taxpayers who can then see their council tax frozen or even better cut, then what on earth's the point? It doesn't seem like it's doing anything to actually benefit the people in that area. And so you have to think then that that's an obvious sign that something isn't right in terms of the priorities of that council.
I'm seeing brown envelopes everywhere, but that's just me. Joe, a real pleasure to talk to you. I love the Taxpayers Alliance. I always have. I think you do a sterling job, so thank you. Joe Ventry there, who is Digital Campaign Manager at the Taxpayers Alliance. So there you go. Now you know where all your council tax money goes, and it's not to you.